O'Leary, former FBI counterterrorism official and senior vice president for global operations at the Soufan Group. Good to have you here. If that's what James Comey told agents, presumably that's what he told agents, what he just told Nicole, would they ask him to establish if it instead was meant as a threat against the president? How would they come to that conclusion?
It's somewhat of an academic point, actually. First of all, the Secret Service has thousands of threats against president and former presidents every year. It is
literally
rare,
thousands.
Thousands. It is rare that they would pull somebody in like this. Certainly not a former director of the FBI. So the term 86 actually comes from Chumley's, which was a famous Prohibition-era bar here in New York City, and it was 86 Bedford Street. And they would give a warning to their patrons to get out the back if it was being raided by the police. Those patrons at that time were Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald. So that's relevant because the term does not mean assassination. And the case law that the Supreme Court established and other lesser courts established in the late 60s, it has to be a true and legitimate threat that an objective, reasonable person would believe, for at least the statute for threats against the president, was intended to inflict serious bodily harm or death upon the president or former protectee.
So James Comey also told MSNBC that he has been cooperating with the investigation so far. Let me play that for you.
I got a call from the Secret Service that night asking if I would speak to them about it. Of course. I admire the Secret Service. They're pros. I spoke to them on the phone. Then they asked the next day when I got home, would I be willing to come in and meet them in person at the Washington field office, which again I did, and they were pros again.
So he doesn't have anything bad to say about them. Does it put pressure on DOJ, though, that Donald Trump has said he believes Comey knew exactly what he was doing?
Well, it certainly does, because DOJ has been completely rebuilt with what appears to be loyal followers of the administration. Traditionally, the two charges that you would pursue, the one, Title 18, 871 is threats against the president, and the other one is 875, interstate threats. You have to meet the components of those statutes. You're nowhere near here. So DOJ supporting a prosecution in this, it would have to come from top down, because, no U.S. Attorney's Office, no line prosecutor is going to be able to support an investigation and move towards, anything close to a charge.
Can I ask you about the Ashley Babbitt case? I'm reminding people that she is the woman who attempted to storm the House Speaker's lobby during January 6th when the Capitol was stormed. She was shot and killed. And now the Trump administration has said they're ready to pay nearly $5 million to her family to respond to a lawsuit brought by her estate, according to two people familiar with the matter. What do you think is the message that is sent with this payout?
I think it's appealing to the base. Again, she's become a rallying cry around the extreme MAGA base, those who wanted to, have the January 6th hostages released. Ashley Babbitt is definitely a victim. It's tragic that a young woman and a mother was killed, but there was nothing that was done wrong by the Capitol Police. They were exonerated. They actually went through their force continuum and tried to, not use lethal force. They did, but they were exonerated because it was within their standards. She is a victim and was manipulated by those putting out the disinformation or misinformation that led her to join QAnon, that led her to believe that the election was rigged and become part of a violent mob storming the Capitol that day. So if anybody should be compensating her family, it's those that have put out all of those falsities that catalyzed her to show up on that day.
So you've been gone from the FBI for 8 years?
Yeah, a little more than 8 years now.
So this is what Dan Bongino, the deputy director of the FBI right now, posted over the weekend. Former FBI director James Comey brought shame to the FBI badge yet again this week. The director, he means Kash Patel here, and I spend an inordinate amount of time cleaning up the messes left behind by former director Comey, and his latest actions are no exception. What could still be considered one of your messes after 8 years at Christopher Wray?
I don't know. I'm wondering whether the deputy director has me confused with somebody. I mean, Somebody else was director for 8 years, including 3.5 under Donald Trump's. I don't know what the messes are. I must have hidden them deep somehow, but I think he's confused.
When you see the stories of people like Danielle Sassoon, who was a Federalist Society conservative Republican lawyer who left under political pressure around the Eric Adams case, when you see people like Mr. Dennehy, longtime, highly regarded FBI agent who his first message to the workforce was, we're going to, quote, dig in. And then not long before Kash Patel was confirmed, he's gone, he's out. When you see the list being assembled of people in the Bureau and at the Department of Justice who worked on January 6 cases, are your thoughts about the vulnerabilities that we face now as a country without those people there? Or are your thoughts about what's replaced them? Just take me through how you see the Department of Justice, where you were the number 2 under George W. Bush, and the FBI and SDNY, which you ran. I mean, you've served in the Department of Justice and the FBI for the better part of your life and career. And a lot of people who've been purged from it, including lifelong conservative Republicans, feel that it's being gutted.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. And my worry has 3 dimensions to it. I worry about the threat. Right, there's still really bad people want to do grievous harm to America. And the FBI, by its competence, not ideology, nothing else but being able to do your job well, stops those threats. And so when great people are pushed out, or great people who stay are forced to keep their heads down, we are less capable at stopping those threats. I also obviously worry about good people. It's just a tragedy to have people like Danielle Sassoon leaving the government. These are the kind of people you want in those roles. And third, I worry about the institutions. Harm is being done to the reality of those places, especially by the people being pushed out or ducking, and to the reputation. Right? We need to believe in our institutions of justice, that they're competent and that they're just. And that's harder and harder to believe. It's going to be a very painful 3.5 years for the Department of Justice and the FBI. They're going to be okay in the long run because you don't change a culture by shouting at it or calling people deep staters. But there will be a lot of rebuilding to be done when this is over.
Most people who were involved in post 9/11 counterterror work, whether from the intel side or the law enforcement side, are very worried about a lot of the cuts, a lot of the brain drain, and a lot of the focus and assets being moved to the border. What are your thoughts on that?
Same. And I also don't know how it is that the FBI moves resources like that. I could not move anything that had a value of implicating $100,000 or something without going to Congress, because Congress makes a law each year that says this is how the FBI in great particular is going to spend its resources. Half of those come through the intelligence budget. And if you're going to make a change, you got to go ask the lawmakers how to make that change. Is that happening today? The FBI has a very sophisticated way of figuring out how we should devote our resources. We never just said, the president wants us to do X, so we'll do it. We would always say, well, why? What is the threat? What is our ability to mitigate the threat? And what makes sense for us to do? I don't have any reason to believe that's going on today. Very concerning.
Donald Trump fires you after he asks you to, quote, see to it to let Mike Flynn go. He's a good guy. Let him go. And you say no. What do you think he got out of the people that agreed to take this job, having all that out in the public record?
I don't know. I don't know whether there were loyalty dinners of a similar sort, but watching the current FBI director sit and pal around with the president tells me he got a closer relationship than we've had in more than 50 years, right? Since Hoover, as a country, I thought one of our points of agreement, Republican and Democrat, was the FBI director should not be a buddy of the president's. And I was the 7th director. The 5 before me all tried to live that way. I knew when Barack Obama was downstairs at the FBI playing basketball. I never went down. I love the game because the FBI director cannot be a buddy of the U.S. president.
You've been under investigation. I don't know if people like Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs ever have. There are a whole lot of people being disappeared from the streets for their political speech around the war in Gaza. I mean, what is it like to be under investigation, and how do people withstand that if that is indeed what's being ushered in?
It's hard. It gets easier the more times you do it. Unfortunately, I have experience. But you have to do 2 things at the same time that seem contradictory. You have to be clear-eyed about the threat to you if you're being threatened with physical violence or you're being threatened with an investigation. And to your family, you have to take prudent steps to protect yourself. But you have to do something else that's hard. You can't overstate the threat.
We begin with that Trump crackdown on free speech. Really no other way to see it. James Comey's interview with Nicole Wallace, which we were just discussing and, of course, wrapped up just about half an hour ago, lays out how he says the Trump administration is trying to scrutinize what is protected speech, or in Comey's case, and we're going to show you exactly what he said, speech that in no way had anything to do with, he says, any violent or illegal intent. And yet the FBI director who served until Trump fired him is now being questioned by the Secret Service. Comey recounting 2 investigative interviews he's done with the Secret Service. He called them professional, but he also completely opposes and debunks what is the reason or predicate for this current probe, the claim that his post of a photograph of seashells spelling out 8647 could be logically construed as a call to violence.
I thought, what a clever way to express a political view. The shells were the same color for each of the letters, so different colors for the letters. It took a lot of work. Somebody with artistic flair did that, and I have a hard time believing it was anybody with a dark intention, and it certainly was no dark intention on my part, on my spouse's part.
Comey speaking carefully about that exact matter, and he is, of course, not only the former FBI director, he was a longtime lawyer and prosecutor himself, so he understands that when you're in this situation, you do have to address the claim, however thin the facts may be. He also noted that 86 is fairly old slang that usually refers to removing an item or a shop being sold out of it.
Voices in the FBI are giving up on Trump. Former voices, you've seen some current voices, you've seen people either quit or get fired effectively knowing that they were going to if they didn't listen to Trump's voice. So whether from a legal perspective, are they fired, they quit? I mean, legally they were fired, but effectively if you're just not listening to Trump's orders because they're unconscionable and you're at the DOJ or FBI or whatnot and you leave, like, effectively you're giving up on him. And what this is all about is Trump's abuse of power and his crocodile tears. It's insane what he's doing. Absolutely. It's so Jekyll and Hyde, because on the one hand, he's absolutely allowing some of the worst crooks in the country, if they're rich and wealthy and well-connected, to get away with stuff and basically stopping the FBI and other federal law enforcement entities from doing their job and taking down, say, white-collar criminals. But on the other hand, he's absolutely weaponizing the power of the state to take on groups that he dislikes, or people or groups that he perceives as his political enemies. So if you're a person defrauding people for millions and millions of dollars, Trump might give you a pardon and won't even investigate you in the first place. But if you post a meme or suggest people in Palestine are human beings, well, then you're going to get a knock at the door. And this is what Donald has created. And what this does is not only make a mockery of law enforcement, but it also makes their job ethically dubious, even more than it was. Because, again, I'm not a huge fan of law enforcement as constructed in the United States. I'm more of a supporter than defund than anything else, defund the police. But it takes an already difficult job and makes it harder, an already challenging job and unsafe job and makes it more unsafe, and you have to question your morals even more than before. And this is why people don't want to support him any longer.